So the deadline's in 10 days. And I regularly get asked, hey, what do you think of this rumor? What do you think of this rumor? This is a rumor. This is a rumor. The rumors kind of involve everybody. Now, this year I've got kind of a unique perspective as opposed to the perspective I've had every other year except this one where, you go to work in the morning and then you hear rumors during the day and then you come home. This is the first time where I can watch the media cycle take place. So, my first glimpse this year into how some of this works, and I go, wait, what? Was when they were talking about which teams were sellers about 6 weeks ago. And the talk at the time was that Carolina and St. Louis and all these teams were sellers. And I thought, they might be, but not yet. Like, it doesn't make any sense for a GM to look, 2 months out from the trade deadline and go, well, we're done, we're going to have to sell guys. Unless you're way out of it, like Arizona last year or Buffalo last year. But they generate this, and I get why. But when I see, and I mentioned this in the Huberdeau video, where, they speculate that maybe Huberdeau's going to go in a trade for Panarin. That rumor gets back to Huberdeau, and then they go to interview him about a rumor they started. And I've started wondering a few things. Like, this week, I'm watching TSN, and I hear that, well, they'll make up their minds on Duchesne and Stone. Tomorrow should be the deadline. It looks like tomorrow's the deadline. You're watching it the next day, and it's like, well, they've decided they're going to hold off on making any decision. Tomorrow will probably be the latest. And then you watch the next day, that it looks like it'll probably be 2 to 3 days before they make up their mind on Stone, Duchesne, and Zengel. So, and all I kept thinking was, management doesn't work that way. Management doesn't constantly change their mind. They don't set a timeline and then go, we'll wait till, well, that's not how it works. It's sort of like when all the Huberdeau stuff came out and a comment was made in that video. Dale Talon doesn't leak. Right. And there are a lot of general managers and a lot of teams in general that they don't leak this information out. So what's left is that the media will speculate. So one media outlet somewhere will speculate something, and then it gets picked up by somebody else. And then the next thing you know, people are like, oh, I've got 3 different sources that say this guy's getting moved. But you check those 3 sources, and they're all reporting on the same thing from the same source that isn't tied to the team. I'm torn on it because there's nothing more fun than saying, hey, what do you think we could get for insert name of player here, right? We've had those discussions. Almost any hockey forum you go on, one of the most popular places to go is trade proposals. It's 10% proposals and 90% people shooting down said trade proposals and telling people why they're crazy and stupid and why those proposals will never work. And I've been on both ends of that, to be honest. Although when it came to creating trade proposals, I had a hard time with it because I'm like, I don't know what's going to work for both teams. Like right now, they're saying Talbot's going to go to Philly, and it looks like Philly would want to send them Brian Elliott back. Looking at it from the outside, my only issue with that is I would rank Elliott above Talbot in terms of goaltenders right now, so there'd have to be more in it if I'm Philly to make that work. And I know Elliott's been on the injured reserve forever, but still, I don't know. It's a weird situation that we find ourselves in around this time of year, but I've seen instances where, too many of them, where it's like, okay, we need to talk about this. Like Calgary. Calgary's in a bit of a slump, right? And the media asks, there's an article on TSN, or on Sportsnet. Is Brad Treliving willing to trust Riddick or Smith on a playoff run? Yeah. Yeah, he is. I really believe he is. But they report that TSN then is in there saying, well, Calgary's probably going to be looking to upgrade their goaltenders at the deadline. What? No. And then the disappointment after with them saying, oh, it looks like Calgary's happy with their goaltending. Meaning somebody in the Calgary organization reached out to them and said, look, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but there's no goaltenders coming in or going out here. Everything's kind of a placeholder until Parsons is ready. And if Calgary goes on a nice, long, deep run this year, they'll be quite happy with that. Coming into this season, I think the aim was to make the playoffs and make some headway in the standings. They've done both. I can't see them falling out of the playoffs. They're just too far clear of everybody else. They have 75 points right now. If they can win 10 games for the rest of the year, that takes them to 95. They're in the playoffs with that. And yet, we see this speculation with mostly Canadian teams, because that's what generates the most interest. But where I'm disillusioned now is I see some of these guys and I hear these things, and because, like I said, because I don't have, you know, the breakup of that news cycle, and I watch it, and I think, now, did he actually talk to somebody on the team, or does he have to do this as his job every day, so he has to go in and give an update, and he's kind of scratching his head and going, I don't really have anything to update here. And I'm not giving names because I don't think there's any one that does it. I think a lot of them do it, where it's, okay, what have you heard? And he can't just come out and go, I haven't heard anything. Because then your whole segment, your whole trade deadline segment, all the great banners and all the great graphics, they don't really mean anything. The biggest trades are normally ones we don't see coming. When Carlson went to San Jose, that was right after he was traded to Tampa, which was right after he was traded to Dallas. Remember those ones? They didn't happen. And the speculation on those trades was out there, and there was all kinds of talk, and then he ended up going to San Jose. And so, even when I hear about contract negotiations, the only ones that I buy into are Toronto, because of the fact that a lot of these media organizations and media types are based out of Toronto. So I can believe that they know what's going on in the Toronto organization, that they know what's going on with contract negotiations. I'm not 100% convinced in other situations, though. I think that I think a lot of it is done to generate interest, and this is why I will report on it at times, but I do my best not to for the most part. It's fun when it has to do with a guy who's a restricted free agent and hasn't reported, like Nylander, right? Or if it has to do with coming up to free agent day and we're talking about who's likely to sign where. Because usually by July 1st, we know who's signing where. And then, you know, half the fun has kind of gone out of it. But at this time of year, it just feels like there's a lot of media-generated hype. There are a lot of websites that generate a lot of clicks with, I've heard this, I've heard this, well, I've heard this. And I hear this, and the rumors sometimes don't match up, whereas, you know, one guy might say, well, Talbot's going to Philly, another one might say, well, Talbot's going here. And sometimes it's just an offhand comment. For instance, Brian Burke talking about Talbot and saying, well, Talbot played 3 starts in a row right after Koskinen signed a contract, which tells me they're probably showcasing him for a trade. Maybe. Or maybe Ken Hitchcock was sending a message to the players, maybe because of the fact that the players kind of quit on Talbot in one game. He said, all right, well, I'm throwing Talbot back in the next game. Hitchcock doesn't seem like a guy who's going to showcase a goaltender. I might be off on that, but it doesn't seem to be his MO. He's trying to win every game, so I don't think he's trying to showcase somebody to sell who he may very well like Talbot. He may look at the 2 goalies and say, you know what? Talbot has a better chance of breaking out of this and leading us to a playoff spot than Koskinen. That may be his thinking. The speculation is wild and rampant, and my only caution to you would be to take anything heard at this time of year with a grain of salt. The one that really made me laugh, I've seen this in a couple of different media locations, is speculation now, hey, would the Kings trade Quick? I found that really funny. Because I remember I mentioned that offhand a few months ago, and King fans right away were like, hey, we would never trade Quick. Quick's not going anywhere. And now the Canadian media is kind of going, hey, would the Kings think about trading Quick? And my answer to that is, careful. Careful there, because there's some fans who aren't going to want to hear it. All right, I'd be interested to know the craziest, wackiest rumors you guys have heard. And again, remember, trade deadline, we're going to see trades that were never rumored. Guys are going to get moved that we're going to be like, oh, this guy moved. What a surprise. And you're going to see a whole panel of people on trade deadline day that go, he moved for what? Oh, really? What happened there? Well, I heard, oh, wow, I didn't think that was coming. And I think it's partly because GMs are very good at keeping this under wraps. And you should. You really, really should. GMs that leak all this stuff out, like, yeah, we're doing this, yeah, we're doing that. Got to watch it, because if you're talking about players you're in talks of acquiring, like, for instance, if Keith Gretzky's out for the Oilers saying, yeah, we're looking at Elliott, you have to watch that line, because that tampering line's really, really small. You can't be talking about another team's player. So it's a fine line, and when you cross it, you can get burned for crossing it. Unless you're Brian Burke talking about the Sedins, which is just fine. You scamp. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. How you guys feel about this time of year. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I will talk to you again soon.